Senator Lee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and thanks to both of you for being here with us today and for your service to our country. I appreciate what you do. We have all been horrified by acts of mass violence, and including and especially those that have occurred in recent memory. I don't think there is a person here in this room, I don't think there is anyone watching on television these proceedings who doesn't want to find a way to end or at least diminish incidents of gun violence. Obviously, there are a number of factors at play in our society and our culture that have created an environment in which gun violence has regrettably persisted. But I worry at times that if we rush too quickly into enacting gun ownership restrictions, that could cause some problems. First, because it could give the American people some basis for concluding that Congress can somehow put an end to this just by legislating. Experience in this area and in others has taught us that we can't fix all of society's ills through legislation. And there has been some suggestion made today, some indication by the evidence that there is at least a mixed record. There is at least an absence of certain proof as to the efficacy of gun ownership laws in the past. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, I worry about what some of the gun control measures that we've been discussing might do to the rights of law-abiding citizens. We have in society some people who will obey the law, regardless of what the law says, and that's good. We have some people who are likely to disregard the law, regardless of what it says. Fortunately, in our society, those in the former category have tended to predominate, and that's what allows us to have a society that generally lives according to the rule of law. But we always have to be on the lookout for the law-abiding, because whenever we enact laws, it's those people whose liberty is diminished. It's those people whose options are constrained by what we do here, and so I focus a lot on those people. And this hearing provides us with an opportunity to discuss whether and to what extent the proposed assault weapons ban of 2013 will help alleviate gun violence without diminishing the rights of those people. So, Mr. Walsh, I'd like to talk to you about this a little bit. In your written testimony, you state that magazines with more than 10 rounds are not necessary for self-defense because the majority of such shootings occur at close range. Am I understanding your written testimony correctly in that regard?
Certainly, that is included in the testimony, Senator.
So let's assume that you're correct that the majority of self-defense shootings do occur at close range. What might this mean for those minority of instances in which law-abiding citizens might use a gun in self-defense in longer range situations? Can we ignore the impact that any laws we adopt might have on persons who need more than 10 rounds to legitimately and lawfully defend themselves and their families, or the needs of those people who might need a longer range approach to self-defense?
Senator, I think it's a good question, because obviously the self-defense is the core of the Second Amendment protection, and we all acknowledge that and want to honor it. Having said that, I have a couple of thoughts. One, part of the reason that most self-defense incidents occur at close range is that when you have an assailant who is at longer range, you have a potential victim has other options. In other words, you can leave the scene, you can call in for assistance and things of that sort, and the immediacy of the situation is not as dangerous. And I would defer to the police chief sitting by my side on the details of that. So that's point number one, that I think it's important to keep in mind that there's a reason why the close range incidents are far more common. Secondly, the evidence that I've seen suggests that the vast majority of self-defense incidents involve one or two shots being fired, if any, one or two shots being necessary. I will tell you that in my personal experience, as an assistant U.S. attorney and now as a United States attorney, I'm not aware of any specific self-defense incident in which a potential victim, to defend him or herself, needed to fire more than 10 shots. Now, hypothetically, I agree with you. There could be a circumstance under which that took place. And in that scenario, I agree with you, there is that potential marginal effect on that person's ability to defend themselves. I'm just not aware of those instances actually happening.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I do think, and I see my time's running out. So let me just point out really quickly, there was a 1995 study on the use of guns in self-defense. And I understand that study concluded that in almost half of the instances in which a victim was attacked and thereafter used a gun in self-defense, that there were at least two attackers. And that in nearly 25% of those situations, there were three or more attackers. So even at close range, wouldn't it be helpful, if not critical, in those instances, which granted may well be a minority of the instances, wouldn't that be helpful to have an ammunition magazine that had more than 10 rounds?
Senator, I'm not sure I'm familiar with the study you're referring to, but I do know there was statistics that were going around that related not to armed assaults, but in other words, assaults with firearms, but assaults by assailants that were not all armed. And I would need to discuss that, need to have a chance to look at that. But to answer your question directly, the fact is that if someone were confronted with three assailants armed with firearms, I suppose there is a hypothetical scenario under which having more than 10 rounds in a magazine would be of some marginal assistance. But as I say, I'm not aware of any such instance actually happening where someone has required more than 10 shots.
Okay.
Thank you very much.